All right, what do we got here? Yes! Look at that. That is exactly one of the boa species that I wanted to come here to Madagascar to find, is sitting right there. This is a Sanzinia madagascarensis. This is a Madagascar tree boa. I'm gonna look into how these and other boas are living out here in the wilds of Madagascar so that we better know how to care for them in our homes. I'm Dave Kaufman, and these are my reptile adventures. So here she is. Look at this beautiful Sanzinia madagascarensis, the Madagascar tree boa. These get about 1.5 meters full grown, and this female is all of that. This is a full-grown Madagascar tree boa. Look at how beautiful and green she is. So there are two tree boas here in Madagascar. One is brown, one is green, and obviously this one, the Madagascar tree boa, is the green one. Just look at those awesome green colors she has. This is one gorgeous tree boa. So unlike the tree boas that we all know and love from the Amazon, these are a little different in the habits that they have. Unlike Amazon tree boas, these guys will actually come out of the trees and start hunting for birds and rodents on the ground. These are much more heavy-bodied than Amazon tree boas are. One of the interesting things about these snakes is, if you look at her big belly here, she looks gravid, but I think she's just had a big meal, so I'm not gonna hold her for much longer. But the reason why I'm talking about that is that when these snakes are gravid, they will actually change color. So when they're gravid, they will actually turn really dark, like almost black when they're gravid. This one still has those beautiful green colorations. But a little fun fact about this snake is that it was actually described in 1844 by Andre Dumeril, who the Dumerils boa is named after. And if you've never worked with these snakes before, or if you're thinking of working with these snakes, these are some of the most awesome boa species in the world, hands down. Just absolutely amazing snakes. All right, sweetheart, this is exactly where she was found, and this is exactly where we're gonna release her. But you gotta release me in order for me to release you there, sweetheart. There we go. And off she goes back to Madagascar. Man, what an amazing snake. All right, so right on the side of this road, we're driving down the road, and look at this. We have another Madagascar tree boa. This one is sitting there perfectly sunning himself. So I'm gonna take advantage of where he's sunning himself to take some temperature readings of exactly where his preferred basking spot is. And look at that, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 30.4 degrees Celsius, exactly where he's basking here. I'm also going to take some humidity readings here, right next to her. Now, if you look at this snake, she's much darker than the one that we found earlier. And when these guys are gravid, they darken up like this. So there's a good chance that this snake might be gravid. I am just going to leave my probe right next to her there. We're going to let that cook, and we're going to see the ambient temperature and the humidity that Madagascar tree boas like to bask at. All right, so let's take a look at that probe right where she is sitting. It's 70, maybe 75 to 77% relative humidity at 33 degrees Celsius, which is 92 degrees ambient air temperature where this snake is sitting here basking. So right now it's the middle of the day. The temperatures aren't going to get much hotter, the surface temperatures and the ambient temperatures. So those temperature readings are a good key and a good indicator on where you should have your hot spots in your enclosures if you are currently working with or want to work with Madagascar tree boas. Look at how nice and gentle this snake is. This is a wild Madagascar Tree Boa. I can just pick her right off the ground. These guys are so gentle. So here's this girl right here. This is an adult female. When they are gravid, they get darker. You can see by her belly here, she's got a pretty fat belly, and her skin complexion is really darkening up. Take a look at that. So this is the second Sanzinia madagascarensis, the Madagascar Tree Boa that we found, and both of them that we found were actually on the ground basking. We are yet to find one of these up in a tree. So these guys will take to the trees where they will hunt birds, they will hunt frogs when they're juveniles, they will hunt rodents in the trees, but they spend just as much time on the ground hunting and basking as they do up in the trees. The Madagascar Tree Boas will burrow in the ground, and that's where she's going right now. She's going right back into her burrow. How cool is that? So tree boas are found pretty much all over the island. And here on the eastern part of the island in the rainforests, our guides have told me that right up ahead, they found another Sanzinia. So we're gonna go over and take a look. All right guys, so here in the eastern rainforests of Madagascar, this is what the tree boas look like here, because there's one right here. And I don't know where her head is, but these guys are so gentle. I'm just gonna kind of pick her up mid-body. There she is, look at that. Wow, just a big, healthy snake. Look at that iridescence on her. But this is what the tree boas look like here in the eastern part of the rainforests, and look at how gentle and docile they are. But this is the coloration of the Sanzinias that you're gonna see here on the eastern side of the island. Not really different from the ones in the south, but there's just those little variations and those little differences in the geographic variation of these snakes. All right, sweetheart, we're gonna let you go. You want to go or do you want to stay? Look at that. She's totally wrapped up on my arm. Man, these are such docile, gentle, big, beautiful snakes. And there she goes. Later that day, after another 8-hour bus ride, we left the rainforest in the south for a more montane and drier habitat to finally look for the #1 target species of the trip, the Dumeril boa. I have never been to its habitat before, and we were getting worried that we had traveled all that way and may not find it. But if the way this trip was going was any clue, we were only a mere moment away from finally seeing a Dumeril boa in the wild. Zilla has everything you need for your reptile pets, from caging to lighting and everything in between. To see their entire catalog and find out where you can get Zilla products near you, visit zillarules.com. Oh wow, look at this incredible landscape. This is the habitat of the Dumeril boa, my all-time favorite boa species. We're going to go up to the base of this mountain here and look amongst the rocks and the shrubland. Those are ringtail lemurs calling just right over here. And if we do find it in this habitat, I'm telling you, the Dumeril boa was the first boa I ever got when I was a kid. They are my favorite boas. I have been waiting to find one in the wild almost my entire life. Let's get out there and see if we can find one. This is going to be amazing. So as we are going through this habitat here of the Dumeril boa, and I'm following this guy who just told me that there's a Dumeril boa that he just saw a couple minutes ago up here, my excitement level is getting into the red right now at the thought of seeing my first Dumeril boa in the wild. But this habitat is unbelievably beautiful. You've got this sparse vegetation in this very thick forest, lots of rocks, I mean lots of big boulders. I mean, look at that one. Oh, hi. We gotta stop and say hello to the skink. Hello, skink. Okay, this is a wild skink just sitting on this rock. Look at this. Oh, I was gonna boop you, but, well, you just did what a skink does. But let's continue on and look for this boa here. Bonjour. Yeah. We got him. Here we go, guys. Here we go. Here we go. Oh my God. Actually, that's not a Dumeril's. That's another Sanzinia. That's not a Dumerils boa. Oh, but wait a minute. This is not Sanzinia madagascarensis. This is Sanzinia volantani. This is the other species of tree boa native to Madagascar. As I discussed, there are two species of Sanzinia. There is Madagascarensis and there is volantani. And that's what this one is. So that means that in one day, we just found both species of tree boas native here to Madagascar. Well, she is lying right here in situ. I'm gonna put my humidity and ambient temperature gauge right next to her. And if she's gonna sit so nice, I'm gonna do a body surface temperature on her. Look at that, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm zapping right on her body, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 26 degrees Celsius. And the ground temperature right next to her is 24 degrees Celsius, which is 76 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the ground temperature that she's basking at right now. And the ambient temperature right where she is 28 degrees Fahrenheit at 72% humidity, which is 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So her body is just about the same temperature as the ambient air temperature around her. And here she is in all of her beauty. Look at this snake. But look at that brown and gray ground color that she has. Very different from the green coloration of the Madagascar tree boa. But this is an adult. These do get a little bit bigger than Madagascar tree boas do, and they're a little more heavily bodied than the Madagascar tree boas. But again, look at that head. That big, thick, blunt bulldog of a head. They kind of have heads that sort of remind me of carpet pythons. And let's face it, Madagascar is in real environmental trouble. The majority of this island has already been destroyed by human activities, but this species is actually thriving in farms and human habitations and disturbed second growth forests. And that is why the IUCN recently classified these as least concerned, basically not endangered, because not only can they live, but they can thrive in these disturbed areas. All right, so we've spotted a snake in here, and this guy says it's a big snake. And if it's a big snake, it is probably a Dumerils. And it is. Hello, sweetheart. That is the first Dumerils boa in the wild right there. So one of my first big snakes that I ever had when I was a kid was a Dumerils boa. And I always dreamt about coming here to Madagascar to find one in the wild. And now, decades later, I'm here, and I finally found my first wild Dumerils boa. This snake means more to me than maybe any other snake that I've ever found anywhere in the world, because this one particular species of snake takes me right back to my childhood obsession with reptiles that has led me on a lifelong love and appreciation for snakes that has taken me to right now, today, to be here in Madagascar, finally, to find my first Dumerils boa in the wild. We all have dream snakes that we want to keep and work with, and we also have dream snakes that we want to see in the wild. And this girl is never gonna know how special she really is. So if you guys have worked with Dumerils boas before, you know that there is a little bit of a downside in working with these snakes, and that's that they have really stinky poops. And Adam Wickens from Wickens Wicked Reptiles was just filming with this girl, and well, this girl showed him her appreciation, and I can still smell that on her, even though that was quite a while ago that Adam was filming with this snake. So when it comes to bedding for your enclosures for Dumerils boas, I would suggest aspen bedding, or a bedding like aspen that is going to help absorb that smell. Just because they have stinky poops doesn't mean that you should ever shy away from working with these incredibly amazing snakes. So a lot of people think that when it comes to the ground boas, of which the Dumeril boa is a ground boa, a lot of people think that the Malagasy or Madagascar ground boa and the Dumeril boa are the same species with a different name, and that's 100% not true. They are in fact two different species of snakes, where the Dumeril boa is more widespread throughout Madagascar. The Malagasy or the Madagascar ground boa is actually found in the north part of the island, which unfortunately we're not going to get up there on this trip, so we're probably not going to be able to see those in the wild on this trip because we probably won't be within their range. But we've already found both species of Madagascar tree boa, and now we've just found the Dumeril boa. So take a look at the habitat. You have this sparse vegetation with trees that have smaller leaves that let the sun penetrate the canopy to the ground. You've got all these rocks that obviously heat up, and so these snakes are going to coil right by these rocks, right by a water source, and that's where they're going to hang out and they're going to bask. And around any one of these boulders, blending perfectly into this ground, there could be a Dumeril boa.
Enough said. Stay green, save green.
So here in the habitat of Dumeril boas and tree boas at night, let's test to see what the humidity readings are and the ambient temperature is. And this should be a guide for your nighttime drops for your enclosures at home. All right, so I let this cook for a little while. Look at that. 85 degrees humidity at 22 degrees Celsius, which is 71 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty significant because it's really high humidity and it's a really relatively low temperature at night. So how do you keep that relatively high humidity in your enclosures at night, especially when the temperature is in the low 70s? Well, I would suggest nightly mistings, and I would also suggest using a substrate that's a coconut-based substrate. And what that will do is that coconut-based substrate will hold in that moisture and increase the humidity in your enclosures, not just during the day, but also at night as well. And on another note, I think that because we are keeping Sanzinias and Dumeril boas too warm, we're treating them as if they are boas from the New World. We're treating them as if they are red-tailed boas, and they have very specific and very different requirements than New World boas do. These prefer cooler temperatures and really high humidity, and I don't think that a lot of keepers are giving them those nighttime drops that they need and keeping that humidity as high as it needs to be in their enclosures. So that gives us a peek for the temperatures here at night that these boas are living in out here in Madagascar. All right, so now that I've come back to where I've released the snake, I wanted the snake to find a basking spot, and that's exactly what she did. So basically, the snake just told me where her preferred basking site is, and it's right here in the nook of this tree. And this is where I'm going to take my temperature readings, both my surface temperatures and my ambient temperatures, and I'm also going to take a humidity reading here, right where this snake is preferring to bask. So if you'll excuse me there, snake, I'm just going to put that right there next to you. And while that's cooking, I'll take a surface temperature of the snake's body itself, and look at that, 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 29 degrees Celsius. That's the snake itself. Next to the snake, look at that, 91 degrees. So the stump of this tree is 91 degrees in the sun, which is 33 degrees Celsius. So her body temperature is a few degrees cooler than the stump that she's basking on. All right, so this may have cooked a little bit. Excuse me, sweetheart. Let's see what we've got here. We've got 73% humidity at 25 degrees Celsius ambient air temperature, which is 77 degrees. So in your enclosures, 77 degrees ambient temperature may be a little bit on the cool side, but that's what the ambient temperature here is. But notice the difference between the ambient temperature and her preferred basking temperature. So if this is where this Dumeril's boa chose to bask, that means that the hotspot in your enclosure should be the temperature at which she's basking at. The ambient air temperature should be the air temperature in your enclosures, and the humidity that's being recorded right where she's basking should be the humidity that you should strive for in your enclosures at home. So this is the habitat of the Dumeril's boa. Rocky ground, lots of grass, sparse vegetation, but look at this ground. This ground is made up of loose soil, just like any other ground, and it's covered with dead leaves and sticks. Detritus is what it's called. And this is what the ground is like in the Dumeril's boa's habitat. But again, I would suggest using in your enclosures, there's a lemur right over there. You want to come over here, buddy? Or I'm just talking to them about, okay, you go away, that's fine. So Dumeril's boas spend most of their time on the ground. They will take advantage of mammal burrows and other holes in the ground for shelter, so it would probably be a good idea, especially when your Dumeril's boa is young, to include a hide box so that they feel secure within your enclosures. So let's talk a little bit about the proper enclosures for Madagascar's boas. For tree boas, they need a lot of ground space because they will utilize the ground. They will come down out of the trees and spend almost half their time on the ground. And that also means that they will spend half their time up in the trees. So for Madagascar's tree boas, you need a pretty big cage. And in fact, you need a big enough cage that's probably going to be a display piece in your home. And these snakes are beautiful enough to make really amazing display animals in your homes. So you need a really big cage for the tree boas with lots of vertical space, lots of branches for them to utilize, but also a lot of ground space for them to also utilize. Water dishes should be pretty big. They do live near water sources, so water dishes should be pretty big and placed on the floor of the enclosure. For Dumeril's boas, you don't need the height that you need with tree boas because they do spend 99% of their time on the ground. So the floor space of your enclosure needs to be much bigger than the height of your enclosure. I know that a lot of people will keep Dumeril's boas in racks, and to be honest, I would not recommend that because there's simply not enough floor space in a tub for your Dumeril's boa to have that ground space that it needs to roam and be free and explore its environment. So again, for tree boas, tall and big cages, display cages really. And for Dumeril's boas, you don't need the height that of course you need for tree boas, but you do need the floor space so that they can roam and naturally explore their environment on the ground, on the floor of your enclosure. These snakes do not do well in small enclosures. So if you are working with Madagascar's boas, or if you're thinking about doing it, just know that proper husbandry for Madagascar's boas come with very large enclosures. So guys, I hope that this video gave you some insight and some more knowledge on how Madagascar's boas are living out here in the wild. These are some of the most interesting, beautiful, and rewarding boas that you can work with. And in herpetoculture, all the boas like red-tailed boas or common boas or Amazon tree boas, they get all of the spotlight, and the Madagascar boas are often overlooked, and that's a real shame because these are my favorite boas, and these are some of the most incredible and again rewarding boas to work with. So as always with these videos, leave a comment below with a tip or a technique on how you guys are keeping Madagascar's boas so that others can learn from you as well. And as always, thanks for watching, and until the next reptile adventure from here in Madagascar, love the planet, feed your reptile obsession, and rattle on.